have just gone live. Welcome everybody who is tuning in live, and if you're watching on replay, a very warm welcome to you. If we haven't met before, my name's Amanda Craven. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and life coach, and I specialise in helping leaders and entrepreneurs break free from emotional trauma so that they can scale their business and so that they can find joy both in their business and in life. And this is a brand new series called Connections, which is an opportunity for you as a viewer to connect with new people in the business arena. And it's also an opportunity for us to explore together the connections between adversity, sometimes trauma, and that drive to make us succeed, and the success in our life, in our business, however we define that, because there is a correlation. And as that's my area of specialism, I'm absolutely fascinated and love getting people's take on that. So today we're going to be talking to Jane Wake, who is a women's, I'm going to let her fully introduce herself. Very warm welcome, Jane, and thank you so much for agreeing to be my first guest in this particular series. So I'm really honoured that you're talking to us today. So Jane's a women's health and fitness expert, has got a lot of strings to her bow, a lot of experience, and works in a very holistic way. But as I say, I'm going to hand over to Jane and ask Jane to tell us about herself, her work, and how she helps people, the different formats that she uses to support. I don't know if it's only women, Jane, but I'm going to hand over to you. So please just pack that out and introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, I suppose I come from a background of fitness, really, and I've trained everybody and anyone over my 35 plus career. But my master's degree, where I did my research, was very much on women, and I suppose my love has always been on how do we make movement more accessible for women, and that's what I did my research on. And I was always fascinated. And it kind of crosses over marketing, really. You know, why is it that women always go to these group activities, whereas men don't seem to do that so much? What are the differences between men and women? And that's what really got me interested, because I also realized how inaccessible a lot of things were for women, and also how restricted women are. And also from my sports science background, when I look at lots of different research, there's very little of it is done on women. So that's where my kind of interest kind of was spurred on from. And from a business perspective, I did study partly on an MBA as well. So it's sports science management. So I studied partly on an MBA. So I've always been interested, particularly in marketing, I think. I'm not quite so good on the finance side. But marketing has always been of interest to me, because it completely crosses over. It's about people's needs, and providing people with solutions. And I think that's kind of what I do from a health and fitness perspective. So I did work for somebody else once, a very short part of my life. And I really didn't like that. And that was a lot to do with the fact that I love what I do. I've always loved what I do, which is to move. I love movement. I think movement is the answer to lots and lots and lots of things, particularly from a health perspective. And I didn't like the fact that I was stuck in a little cubbyhole office. Although I did learn a lot. You always learn from these experiences. And also being in that job put me on a path and a career to write. I was in an editing role for a magazine, for a fitness journal. So it put me in that sphere of writing, and using writing as a way of communicating, as well as using my voice and my face to communicate. So it gave me another string to my bow. And then I set up my own company, which was very much in the kind of fitness realm, but also in the educational realm as well, training other fitness leaders because of my academic background. So I kind of went down that route, and then I've done countless businesses since then.
Yeah,
I'm kind of a bit of a reinvention person, and I think
Mm.
You know, you can look at it in different ways. Some people would say, oh, she's always moving on from one project to the next. And it is true. I do get bored quite easily and I need
Yeah.
to move on. But also, the world is changing constantly all the time. And COVID was the perfect example of how you needed to move quickly. So I like to move in my business as well as in my body. So
Yeah.
something that I do. It's not always a good thing, but I think for me it works anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, do you have an ideal client? Do you work with a particular type of person, a particular profile?
no, not really, because I think that's the beauty of what I do. I'm fascinated by how different people work, and I think it's, you know, I go across the board from a female perspective. I'm fascinated about where we've come from, which is probably very similar to this conversation today in terms of where I've come from. But
Mm,
if we want to understand where we're going, I think we do need to look back a little bit. I do think we need to understand where we've come from. And from a women's health perspective, it's one of the biggest reasons why we haven't progressed an awful lot, because we haven't, from a female health perspective, from all of the issues that women face, particularly what they're facing now, we haven't really connected to ourselves physically enough to really understand our own bodies. And that's
mm,
what I'm about. And I'm about educating people to be able to understand their own bodies and communicating that. And it doesn't matter who the person is. My job is to communicate that in the right way so that
yeah.
people understand. So I have various different programs and ways of communicating that. I reach out to people through media, through corporates, through one-to-one, you know, people come direct to me, to my website. And I have to communicate in different ways, and I think that's the important thing, really. So it's any woman, but it's also it's educating them to understand themselves more and to so they can live a better life, really. And
Mm.
I'm very passionate about that. And sometimes I remember that I need to make money out of it. Um, but that is my focus, and I'm very lucky in that I love what I do. So it's not hard, really, to say, right, who am I targeting?
Mm,
You know, I could go down a route, and, you know, so everyone at the moment is very much talking about menopause, and I thought about it really carefully, because I suppose as I've grown up, I have gone through all the different phases of a woman's life,
mm,
now post-menopausal, and still got more phases to go, obviously, but I've as I've gone through that, I've kind of gathered a lot of research and a lot of evidence, and I've worked with women of different ages, and I feel at the moment very strongly, and some marketeers need to listen to this, that where we're going with the menopause at the moment is not where
mm,
we need to be. And I
right.
think we need to remember that this is the start of something really, really small, and that it's a field that's going to grow and grow and grow. But I think looking at a woman's life in a snapshot is not the greatest thing to be doing. And I think that that's part of the problem with how we are marketed to, is that we are seen as different age groups, you
Mm,
know. So I could be targeting women of a certain age, but for me, a woman is all ages. She's
yes.
who she's been and she's who she's going to be.
Mm,
When you're looking at the individual woman, I don't see her as she is in her age now. I
yes.
see her as a woman of all ages, and I
Yeah.
think that's what women are supposed to do. And tribally,
Mm,
women are supposed to mix with women of different ages. So I think there is a mismatch here with how we're being marketed to and how we're selling to women, because
right.
actually traditionally, and going back through generations and generations, how women have survived has not been by grouping just with the women of their own age group. It's been by being with women of all different ages,
Right.
because that's how you learn and you grow, and actually that's how we get our support systems as well.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of mismatch, because we're just, you know, why aren't people in menopause talking to women who are postmenopausal? Like,
Mm,
20 years ago they had their menopause, 30 years ago they had their menopause. Why are we just talking in amongst ourselves? We also need to talk to all generations, but we also need to talk to men as well. And I think
yeah.
that that's that's, you know, the issue with a lot of the ways that we work with women. So no, I'm about women of every age,
Yeah. Yeah.
every socioeconomic group, because I have a passion for looking after all women, you know, and it doesn't matter
Mm.
where they come from. Everyone deserves the same information,
Yeah.
and the rights to the rights and the same education. And
Mm.
if I can do that for as many women as possible, then I'm going to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. So when you say that it needs to change this idea of a snapshot and putting people into categories, really into boxes, how do you suggest that that change occurs? Then what do marketeers need to do differently?
I think they need to see women not as an age, but just as a. It's an interesting question. I've never been asked that question before, and it's a really good one because you're
Yeah.
making me think. And when you see a woman, you see her for who she is
Mm.
and for what she does and what she brings to the world, whether it's to be a mother, to be an entrepreneur, to be a businesswoman, to be a nurse, whatever profession she is in, and what interests her within that field. Because she can be any of one of those things at multiple different ages,
Yeah.
and I think that that just because you're doing one thing at that one certain point in time, that is not reflective of who you are as a person.
Mm, mm.
And
It's the journey. It's all those
yeah,
experiences that have
yeah.
accumulated. So
And if we
it's that
want to
holistic.
sell things that are going to make people happy, that are going to make them feel better about themselves, um, then it needs to be something that accepts that woman in all different forms and different
Mm,
ways, and not trying to give her one idealistic picture of how she's meant to be. It
mm.
should be products and services that actually enable her to be herself. You
Yeah.
know, and and that's probably not going to sell very easily, actually.
Mm,
And
mm.
that's probably why we aren't marketed to in that way. And you know, but I think that marketers definitely need to start thinking differently on how they do things. And also, one of the things that I've really learned actually is that, for example, when you deal with one age bracket or
Mm,
one specific point in the person's life, so take pre and postnatal women, for example, which is one kind of group of women that I've looked after for a long time.
mm.
When you just look at that, your market is constantly changing because they're moving away from that phase and then going into the next phase.
Yes.
Actually, from a longevity perspective, if you've got a product that serves somebody all of their life, then that's got to be the best thing. And
Mm, mm.
I work a lot, you know, in the fitness industry, and I see this with health clubs all the time. You know, they're not looking at long term. They just want new members, new members. They're always after new members. What
Yeah.
what they should be doing is looking after the members they've already got. And I think if we can look at products that actually do that, that
Mm.
create this loyalty, that actually
Yes.
look at women as tribal, who
Mm,
work across ages, who want to talk to women of different
mm.
ages.
And you've got that support, haven't you? Top down, bottom
Yeah,
up.
yeah. You know, so
Mm,
so so if you have a product that isn't just about the family, but is about all ages as well,
mm.
I think that's winning, or varying products
Yeah.
around your brand.
I suppose this, everybody's creating avatars, aren't they? They're sort of niching down into their ideal client. So what you're suggesting actually flies in the face of all of that. So radical.
It does, but then again, maybe it doesn't, because actually what you're doing is getting women to actually understand themselves better
Mm,
and find out what makes a woman tick more. You know,
yes.
so it comes down to actually what is that woman's interest, what is it she loves, you know, and enabling her to actually uh, really enjoy those things. And if that happens to be your product, then that's fantastic. And then finding out. So rather than marketing to her on something that she really doesn't need, but you're going to
Mm,
persuade her that she needs it, how
mm,
about actually marketing to her something that she knows she loves?
mm,
And,
mm.
and I think that I think there is another way of doing it. I haven't quite worked it out yet.
Yes, yeah. Well, we're all on a journey, aren't we?
Yeah,
And we are all works in progress,
yeah.
and
Well,
yeah.
come back
So
and ask me in 10 years, and if I
yeah.
completely failed, then you'll know that my idea of working across the board isn't going to work, and I'm no
Yeah.
longer in business. But
Well, hopefully we can touch base before then,
yeah.
and see how it's going. So, talking about people's journeys, and the person we are in this moment is a sum of all our experiences, and I alluded to this correlation between uh, what has happened to us in the past, particularly adversity and or trauma, and success, however we define success. But there is this definite correlation between difficult stuff happening to us in our life, especially in our early life, and that being driven in whatever way that may be. For some people, it might be driven from a background of poverty. They are driven uh, to seek wealth and to become financially successful because that's something they want to get away from. There is usually something that is driving us as entrepreneurs or as leaders, and I say that more so than for people who are employed and employees. That I think entrepreneurs are a particular breed, and have quite often had something that has driven them to want to create something on their own, and with very specific goals in mind. So, is there anything that you feel has driven you, has had a big impact on your entrepreneurship?
Mm. It's funny because you did ask me this question before, and I knew that that's what this was really going to be about, and I hadn't really thought about it, but I have thought about it since. And
Mm,
I was brought up with I was a family of women, only women, because
right.
I've got my mum and my three sisters. My dad died when I was 11. He died very tragically. He committed suicide. So
Oh,
it was a traumatic time in my life, and I was
oh,
11 years of age. Now,
yes.
I think that actually, in a way, because I was that young, I was probably a little bit more protected than maybe my sisters who were a little bit older and understood a bit more.
Right.
Um, Having said that, what I did then was I suddenly grew up. I don't and I just I'd always been slightly on the fringe. I'd always was a kid who was very independent. I've always been very happy in my own company.
Mm,
I didn't need to have lots of people around me. I was always very creative on my own.
mm,
I've been, I come up with stuff all the time. So that's part of me. That's who I am. And
mm,
I think you can't say that these kind of traumatic experiences are, yes, it's a part of who you are, but you are who you are. Is what I'm trying to
mm.
say there. I think
Yes, yeah.
you are a certain type of person. Um, but what it did was it kind of almost homed in on all of that a lot more.
Mm,
Um, it meant I was in a family of women. It meant that I was looking up to a very strong woman who was my mum,
mm,
who, fended for us and and did everything for us. I mean, she really did. It also meant that I didn't have really any discipline around me. There was no
mm,
disciplinarian, not that I think my father would have been particularly, but uh, I pretty much was free to do what I wanted to do. But I wasn't a wild child.
mm,
I did a few things that I shouldn't have done, but I wasn't a real wild child. I just had this kind of hat on from a very
mm,
early age, and I kind of knew from a very early age that I was gonna, yeah, do stuff. And I'm always been a big dreamer and always, thinking beyond and bigger.
mm.
Um, and there was nothing to stop me. That's what it did. There was absolutely nothing to stop me.
Right.
And it so I don't know whether that that event happening in my life completely changed the course. I don't know whether I would have done that anyway,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
it got me thinking about it,
Mm.
wanting to I just became this very kind of independent. I mean, I was doing things like sorting out the boiler and the electrics when I was age 12 and 13, and I'm working it
Mm.
out, and no one was telling me how to do any of these things. I never, even my mum didn't. I mean, I remember my grandmother showing me things and telling me how to do things. My mum was so busy working that I don't remember. I just had to find things out for myself quite a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
practical things. Um, and so I think that gave me that kind of impetus to just get on and
Yeah.
do stuff
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
find things out and
Mm.
move things forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked about almost an opening and a freedom to just continue in that vein that you had clearly already started in being a creative, independent
Yeah,
person, but yeah, turbo boosted in some way, perhaps that. Although, of course,
yeah,
we will never know, but
yeah, yeah, and I have lots of kind of feelings about, when my dad died, I I I never had that, "Oh, how dare he do that?" I never had um, that feeling. I just had huge love for him, and it was really sad, but I really believed he didn't want to be in this world anymore, and he was kind of doing something for us as well. It was
mm,
kind of letting us go forward, and I kind of feel he's still there anyway, let's
yes,
do this. And I've
yeah,
always kind of believed that,
mm,
he was that part of that, and I think that's how I coped a lot with it at the time, was that he was, I did not that I thought about it to this level then, but there was that element of freeing us to be able to move forwards when he possibly didn't feel he could do.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really interesting take on it, and yeah, I mean, I'm so sorry for the tragedy that was that loss, but yeah, it will have definitely shaped you, and perhaps, yeah, added to that, giving yourself permission to explore and to change and to reinvent yourself, because you did reinvent yourself at that moment, didn't you, into somebody who was far more responsible.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, and I kind of, I was already, as I say, a little bit on the fringe, but I definitely continued that on, and I've always felt that. I've always felt that, and I suppose that in a way has made me think, yeah, I can do this because
Mm,
I'm I am a little bit different. I can stick out a little bit more. I can get
mm,
myself noticed a little bit more if I just do this and I do that, and I do have the capability to do that. I haven't always felt that, and I think this is really important to point out. This makes me sound like, everything's rosy and everything's great, and I think my kind of my bullishness has
mm,
also completely done the other things for me, in other words, been a detriment to me at
yes.
some points, because I've needed support at points where I haven't been brave enough to ask for it. I've always thought, "Oh, everything's gonna be all right. I can do everything." I've got this real, kind of feeling that
Can do.
I can do it all, when actually, do you know what? You can't do everything, you
Mm,
can't do
mm,
it all yourself. So there is a, the other side to it, that now I'm older, I can look back, like we're talking about looking back, and I can
mm,
look back and go, "Well, yeah, I should have maybe made some different decisions." And I think that, one of the things that I have learned, and what I really understand now, and I understood it when I was that little girl, but I lost it for a while, and
yeah.
that's going with your gut instinct and absolutely
Mm,
listening to yourself. Because I did, for a very long period of time, start to really listen too much to other people, to the point where I lost a sense of where I was going.
yeah.
If anyone's listening to this, and you're really, um, you're a little bit lost right now, just take a moment, sit back, give yourself some space, and just really listen in on yourself.
Mm,
And I think that, we can get so bombarded with so much information about where we should be going.
mm,
At the end of the day, you're only ever going to be as good as your passion and your drive to do that thing. And if you don't have that, and if you don't believe in it, then it's not going to work.
Yes.
So, and that comes from totally from within yourself. It doesn't come
Mm-hmm.
anywhere else. It's right inside here, and you've got to really make sure that fire is still really burning.
Yes.
And if it has gone out, how do you reignite it?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where the support can come in as
Mm.
well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I share with my clients time and time again. Tune in to your gut feeling, listen to your gut,
Mm.
listen to your heart, because we also have neurons in our heart. So,
Yeah,
these are our little brains as well as this
yeah,
one. But
yeah,
as humans, we have this very well developed prefrontal cortex that can override our gut feeling, can shut it down.
yeah,
But what it actually does is just stuff it down. So it's still there, and it's going to seep through and influence our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, develop unwanted habits, for example. But yeah, we have to give ourselves time and space to strip that away and to listen to our bodies.
I love that you've said that, because I have this expression, which is to cut your head off
Mhm.
and listen from there down.
Yeah.
What is going on down there in terms of what your body is telling you? And I love the idea of chakras, actually, because
Yes.
you can I know I'm going really holistic here, and I know, bearing in mind I'm a sports scientist, so I kind of always back everything else up, everything I say up with science.
Yeah.
The only way I can back this up with science is, have you heard of the science of epigenesis? Not epigenetics, but
Ah,
epigenesis. And the science of epigenesis is that instinct. It's how the turtle, when it's born, knows to shuttle back to the sea. It's
down to
how
the
the chimpanzee
sea.
knows how to herd. It's how
Mm,
we know as an instinct to nurture as mothers, or whatever it is. It's that instinctive thing, and it's well, it has been a science for a while, but it's something that's bubbling back up now.
right.
And it is something that's within us, and
Mm,
it's not genetics. It's actually just learnt behaviors over
yeah.
generations and generations and generations, which is a different thing.
Yeah.
And and it can tell us a lot. And it is something that what is our bodies, what is our, not just our mind, but down from
Mm,
here telling
yeah.
us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just as a brief aside, I found that when I gave birth to my first daughter 24.5 years ago, that I'd lost my mum a couple of years before, and didn't have any family nearby. I had a few friends who had children who had followed books and protocols for getting your child to sleep and feeding and all the rest of it. So that was the only information I had. I didn't have this tribe that you've talked about that is so important, and so started following what my friends were doing with their babies, but it didn't sit right.
Mm.
And I remember that controlled crying was it was in at the time. And I tried that once. I actually cried more than my baby sitting outside the room on the landing. But once I pushed that to one side and started listening to what felt right for me, and me tuning into my baby, tuning into myself, tuning into my baby, then there was so much more of a bond and a flow and a connection.
Mm.
So
Oh, I
really
think that's
important.
beautiful. Yeah, and I think that's there in business as well, and I
Mm,
think particularly for women and women as leaders, I think you can really tune into that, and I think that this is where I think in women's health, but in women professionally, we've still got a long way to go. And for men as well to understand that and see
mm.
how when women work naturally, because we have these monthly cycles, and yes, when you're post menopausal, those monthly cycles do disappear, but they're still there. It's a rhythm.
Yeah, they are still there. I can
It's
vouch
still
for
there.
that.
And it's a rhythm, and women can be, we tend to think of this as being a negative, when actually, so when you look at how our hormones affect us, and we have all these kind of things that put negatives into this, so the idea that um we look at premenstrual tension, women are cranky and angry and negative, When our progesterone levels drop, we can get depressed. We can start to feel, so when our hormones are all over the place, and then when we go to perimenopause and they're really all over the place, rather than seeing this as a negative, see what the positives are in all of this. Women are so creative and so empowered when their hormone levels are at a certain point, particularly estrogen at that peak point in her cycle. And these movements are still happening. And when women are very much connected to the earth, to the ground, because actually, women's cycles can actually come together when they're together. And
Yes, I've noticed that when I was a
having
student.
daughters, you will, yeah.
Incredible. And my daughters, yeah.
So when you're with other women, your cycles tend to actually come together, and that's a very natural thing. And we are very much connected. This is our hormones are affected by pheromones, by mood, by all sorts of things. People even talk about the moon and all that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm a great believer in that. If it can move the sea, for goodness sake, and create tides.
And connecting to a woman on that level, whether it's yourself, whether it's the women you're working with, whether you're a man and you've got a team of women with you, connect with that. Don't work against it, work with it, because that's when women really come into their power.
Yes, yeah.
And when she's at a certain point, she's going to come out with some of the best things for your business that you will ever know if you just work with it and not against it.
Yes,
and there'll be times when she needs to be able to say, and you need to be able to accept, no, she needs some time out. And men don't have that. They work to the sun and the moon in that it's 24/7, and you have time to sleep and time to wake up, and you should be working to that cycle. We should all be working to that cycle, but women do have a different cycle in terms of how she works. So we shouldn't be full on the gas, 28 days a month, every month of the year. We need to have periods where we tail it off. And we need to listen to our bodies and to our heart and to our gut as to when those periods are. Because they work even better when we are at those higher points.
Yeah, I think we should have an in-depth conversation about that at some point. I think that would be really, really useful for people in the workplace, whether they are an entrepreneur with staff, or a leader with a team. I think it's really, really important. But yeah, gosh, we could talk all day. I know we could. So, as we are just about out of time, if people want to find out more about what you do, Jane, and want to connect with you, I know we're going to pop some links under the video streams. So just tell us what are the ways then that you're going to share links to?
Yeah, well, my website is janewake.com, so that's very easy. Just type in my name and it will come up.
Brilliant.
But I'm on pretty much all media channels. So LinkedIn is Jane Wake. I'm a Jane Wake UK on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads. I'm trying to keep up with them all. So Jane Wake UK is the other way you can find me as well on all of those things. So
right, and we'll pop some links, because you've also got a YouTube channel, haven't you? So we'll add a link to
that. If you just look up Jane Wake, and there's lots of exercise videos on there. It's predominantly exercise, because that's the main thing. I'm a sports scientist, and fitness and exercise is primarily what I do. But I just so strongly believe that you can't do any of that unless you look at all the other stuff and aspects of health as well, which is your lifestyle, your nutrition. So and what's going up in here, which is why I'm so interested in what you do, Amanda. So it's all interlinked. And I think when we look at it in that holistic way, it all comes together so much better.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me today. And I know that the pearls of wisdom that you've shared are going to be really really interesting to people who, I know we've had a few people dipping in and out, and I know that people will be watching on replay. So yeah, great pleasure to talk to you, and we've got loads more to explore together. So we'll have to do this again. soon,
Yeah.
if that's all right with
Yeah,
you. So
totally.
thank you so much. As we said, we're going to be popping the links underneath the video, so you can get in touch with Jane and find her YouTube channel. If you would like to have a conversation with me about working through emotional trauma, which could be childhood trauma, it could be something that I'm particularly focusing on this quarter, which is the trauma relating to a narcissistic relationship, especially with a covert narcissist. This is my big focus as we run up to the end of the year. I would love to have a chat with you and explore the different ways we could work together. My contact details will also be below, or you can DM me on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week, Tuesday, what's it going to be then next week? The 24th at 1 p.m. BST, 8 a.m. EST. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you.